My name is Nikki, and today I'm just going to be talking about my tech startup journey. So my career so far, I'm 24 years old. I started pretty young, and then hopefully give you guys a bit of an idea about if you do decide to go into entrepreneurship, or in particular tech entrepreneurship, what that might look like and feel like. So my journey into entrepreneurship started pretty young. When I was about 14, I remember I came home from boarding school one day and my brother was there. And this is my little younger brother who had taught himself how to program computers when he was about 8, and he was very enterprising. And we sat down at the table and he goes, "Nikki, I was thinking, like, do you know we could buy stuff and then sell it for more than we buy it for and make profit and on the internet?" And I was like, "Oh, this sounds fun." And we had some time to kill in the holidays. And so we ended up starting a bunch of little businesses. Initially, we were like laptop resellers, and we sold mobile phones and a whole bunch of different things. And we were selling them online. And then eventually, we decided to go into the t-shirt business. And I found a supplier in China, and we had what was called a dropship arrangement. So basically, I would design t-shirts in all these different designs, and then I'd list them on our eBay store, which is where we sold them. And then when someone bought them, they might pay $25 or $30 for a t-shirt. I'd send the order to our supplier in China and pay them $7, and they would print it and ship it straight to our customer. So I was sitting there in my boarding school dormitory, not touching any of these t-shirts. And it was a pretty low risk arrangement, but it was also a lot of fun, and it taught me a whole lot about mainly entrepreneurship. I did have to learn some technology skills, because I remember making eBay listings in Dreamweaver using HTML. And that's how I initially kind of got some kind of interest in technology, because it was a tool that allowed me to run my business. And then on top of that, it was a lot of like looking at analytics, like what t-shirts are selling and where should we be putting our time on customer service, marketing, dealing with suppliers and all of that. And eventually my brother Hamish ended up leaving that business and doing something else. And by year 12, I'd actually grown it into being a very, very profitable business for a schoolgirl. And it was really funny, because we were an eBay power seller. I was an eBay power seller when I was about 16, and we get all these emails and letters in the mail from eBay saying, "Come to these eBay power seller conferences." And technically, you're not even supposed to be on eBay until you're 18. And I'm like, okay, we probably shouldn't rock up at those things. But it was a lot of fun, and it kind of taught me a lot. And at the same time, and developed this interest in technology, and especially using the internet to sell things and get ideas out there and get products out there. And the cool thing about the internet that really appealed to me is that you can make a product and then you can distribute it to millions of people potentially. Like, it's very, very leverageable source of distribution. And when I was 16, I had this idea, and the idea pretty much stemmed from the fact that I was making a lot of money in my other business, had no expenses, and was spending a lot of that money on clothes. So I just started accumulating all of these clothes, and I'd wear things once or twice and then get bored of it and then kind of not want to wear it anymore and go get something new instead. And I had this problem. I had a closet full of clothes but nothing to wear. And I had this idea when I was 16. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to use the internet to connect women and girls together and allow them to trade fashion with each other? And at the time, my business studies teacher was like, "Nikki, there's a business planning competition on," and I think it was a CPA competition or something. And I ended up using that idea and writing a business plan and entering it, and won the nationals for that. And I was like, oh, like maybe I should kind of pursue this. And I kind of thought about it until I finished school, and I was raring to go. As soon as I finished the HSC, I remember my last exam was an art exam, and it was in the morning, and by the afternoon I was in the office of a company I ended up partnering with to do the technology side. So at this point, I didn't know how to code. I didn't really know much about the technology side. Like, I had a very surface level understanding of the technology, and I was getting myself into doing this business that was essentially a software product. You're not selling the software, but like the product is essentially software. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I was incredibly naive. I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna solve this problem. And that's what I went and did. I partnered with this company, and initially how I kind of got it started was, this is way back in 2010, I started a Facebook event, and I said, hey, my name's Nikki, I'm 18, I have a closet full of clothes but nothing to wear. All my friends have the same problem, and here's my idea of a website that will allow us to fix this problem together. And if you'd use a website like this, can you click attending the event? And if not, can you click not attending? And it was supposed to just be a bit of a survey for some of my girlfriends. But within 2.5 weeks, it was shared with about 40,000 women. And then I filtered some of those into a Facebook fan page and had a few thousand fans of this non-existent product. So I was like, okay, like maybe I should build it. And so I partnered with this company. We ended up building it, launching it in Australia, and it immediately took off with no marketing spend. It was just word of mouth, and we're getting a lot of press because when you're young and female in a male-dominated industry, the reporters like to talk to you, which is actually a very good thing. And so we're kind of on this growth spurt. We did about 5,000 or 6,000 transactions in our first few months, which for that kind of business is really good. So things are looking really good. But the big problem and the big weakness for me in my skill set was always the technology. I didn't have a lot of experience like working with developers, but I didn't understand a lot of what was happening there. And I'd partnered with a company, and the technology that they'd built wasn't scaling with the number of users that we were getting. So basically, when you're building software, you have a lot of different choices in how you're going to architect that software, and the choices that were made and how it was built, it just wasn't built in a very robust way. And there were a few other issues there. So I ended up firing them, and then I was in this boat of like, okay, I can't code. I need someone who I'd like to hire to do this. And so I ended up hiring a friend of a friend who was a very good developer. He kind of came on board, but still it was just like a lot of technical problems, so much so that we actually lost a lot of the momentum that I had initially gained when I was when starting 99 Dresses. And I remember back in, I think it was 2011, it was midway through the year, I was having my doubts about this business model in Australia. There were a whole bunch of things that weren't working out. I went home to my parents' place in the country down in Berry, and I think I locked myself away in my room and cried for an entire week. Like I literally thought I'd have to stop this business. I was running out of, money and like a whole bunch of different things. And I kind of thought, well, okay, I can either stop or I can just get up every morning and sit down at my desk and keep doing something. And through some stroke of miracle and a whole bunch of coincidental events, I ended up finding a really good advisor, Matt Barry, who's the CEO of freelancer.com. So it's like a public company in Australia. Became really good friends with him, and he helped me a lot. And I remember going to him and saying, Matt, this business isn't going to work in Australia. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I won't go into. And I said, I think I need to get to the US. And he said, Nikki, you're going to get crushed over there. Like, you don't have money, a team, connections. Like, he said, why don't you apply for Y Combinator? And Y Combinator is pretty much like the Harvard of startup accelerators. It's the #1 accelerator in the world. And for those of you who don't know what a startup accelerator is, it just means that it's kind of like an organization with a whole bunch of very experienced people in there, and they mentor you and give you money and take a percentage of your company. And getting into this one was very, very difficult. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And so I actually, through some stroke of luck as well, ended up getting into Y Combinator. I ended up bringing on board a couple of new co-founders to do the technology. I ended up moving to California for a while. We launched it in the US, and everything was going great. And so in the space of about 6 months, I'd gone from rock bottom to, oh my gosh, this is like my dream. It is happening. This is so cool. And then we went out fundraising, and I went and pulled together a $1.2 million fundraising deal with a whole bunch of really prominent Silicon Valley investors. And so just to explain how that works to some of you, they basically agree to put in a certain amount of money, they get some equity, and for a lot of startups, they get their payoff a lot down the road when you sell it for a lot of money. So they're hoping to make a good return on that money. And a lot of startups, they do require a lot of investment upfront. And so that was kind of the business model that we were going after. And I was really excited about it. They were really excited about it. And then about 3 days before that money was supposed to hit our bank account, my 2 co-founders decided to leave the company and go do their own thing. And that was pretty devastating. So I'd gone from being rock bottom to like, oh yeah, like it's all happening and how like this is awesome, to literally being rock bottom again. Because again, my problem was I didn't understand the technology. And so when they walked away, I was relying on them to handle the technology side of things. And I couldn't necessarily just pick it up and run with it. So again, we lost a lot of momentum on that. And I kind of was at the point where it's like, okay, I can either give up or just like keep trying new stuff. And I've been at this for a little while now. I was pretty tired. But I ended up finding a new co-founder called Marchin. And we ended up kind of packing up and moving to New York. I managed to close some of our fundraising deal. And we moved to New York, and we actually threw out all the product that we'd already built and went and rebuilt the whole thing as a mobile app with a slightly different kind of trading mechanics to it. Because what you'll find a lot of the time when you're building these kind of tech products is you need to make sure you're staying really close to the customer and you're making something that people want. And when we moved to the American market, the feedback we were getting was, well, you know, it's a cool idea, but like I'm too lazy to do it on anything other than my phone. So we ended up going down that route, launched it in New York, and just started taking off. Like it took off pretty fast, and within a few months, we're doing about 1,000 transactions a week on that, which is pretty good, especially for the budget that we were on. So we're like, okay, like this is going well. We kept growing it, but inevitably we were budgeting to kind of get profitable before needing another fundraising round, but that didn't eventuate. So we needed to raise some more money, and we had investors locked in doing it, and then the deal fell through at the last minute. And basically what that meant was that I had to shut down the whole company, which was absolutely devastating. I'd been working on it for like 4 or 5 years. And to be fair, I think that the fact that the fundraising deal fell through was more of a symptom of the fact that there were problems with the business model. It's a great product, great community, but the business model, there are some issues with it, which is very intricate, and I won't get into and bore you with that detail. So basically, I was in a position where I had to go find my team new jobs. I moved back from New York and went back to Sydney. And I kind of thought that, I don't know, I just decided to sit down one day and I wrote this, well, it was a blog post. It was like a 20-minute read about that whole experience and what it kind of felt like to go through that whole kind of journey and for things to not work out in the end. Because a lot of the time when you see things about entrepreneurs and you see it in the media and all these companies and they make $1 gajillion and this and that, you don't hear about the 98% of people who, you know, try really hard and things don't work out. And so I kind of just wanted to write that, and hopefully it would help some other people going through something similar. And I shared it with some friends on Facebook, and that ended up going insanely viral and had something like 250,000 views in 48 hours, and was shared all over the place in like all different countries and syndicated all over the world in different publications. And it was a bit cray-cray. And then what happened was, from that, I got a lot of job offers. I got people, someone bought me a plane ticket home from New York from that because he really enjoyed the article. Some other people, I got thousands of emails from other entrepreneurs who'd been through something similar. And a lot of job offers all over the world from really good companies. So, I mean, for those of you who are thinking maybe a career in entrepreneurship, I actually went to UTS initially and dropped out to pursue my startup, and my parents were kind of worried, like, oh, if this doesn't work out, like, without a degree, how are you going to be able to get a job? And hasn't really been a problem for me. My problem is actually wanting a job. I much prefer doing my own things and working on my own startups. So I came back to Sydney. Actually, I went back to Berry, to my parents' place in the country, to take some time out. And I kind of thought, okay, what is the one skill that I think will improve my career and help me progress, especially in this industry? And for me, it was pretty obvious that was learning how to code. And the reason being that even if I had no desire to be a developer, I didn't want to actually necessarily, full-time write software. But if I desired to be an entrepreneur in this space, knowing how to code, knowing how things are constructed and put together, being able to liaise with developers and understand their problems, and when they say, oh, this is going to take 4 hours, whereas this is going to take 30 minutes, now I understand those choices and those timeframes a bit better. And so that was my goal. And so I went online and I did all these kind of tutorials and courses and ended up starting out doing building iOS apps, so iPhone and iPad apps. I was just using Objective-C at the time, and then I started getting into building games, which I really enjoyed, on mobile games. I did some Unity, so it's like a professional game development software with C#. And I realized this is really fun, I really, really like this. And I also would make silly little games as gifts. So last Father's Day, I made my dad this game where he had to navigate his head through the obstacle course and collect little reasons why I love you notes and stuff like that. And that's the kind of fun stuff you can do once you, have an understanding about coding and how to put stuff together. And I just realized it's all about making fun stuff. And my goal with coding was always, I want to be good enough to prototype something. I want to be good enough to have an idea and be able to get it to the point where I can put it in front of people and see how they use it. And if it needs to be the best software in the world, then I'd hire a professional to do that. But I just wanted to be good enough. And one of the things I noticed when I was learning how to code was that everything is it's kind of taught in a very dry way, usually. It can be a little intimidating, and usually it's taught by 30-something-year-old males, which is not a problem. It's just that I feel like as a woman kind of coming into it, you really do feel like sometimes that it's a bit of a boys game. And so I kind of thought, look, it'd be cool to actually offer coding education, especially to people my age and the younger generation. So high school girls and boys. That's fun, and it's also female friendly, and just really engaging. And it doesn't turn out to be this intimidating thing that a lot of people think you have to be really smart to know how to code, which is not the case. And so I talked to some friends, and we ended up getting together with Code Camp, and so Code Camp teaches primary school kids how to code with holiday camps, and so I'm working on the high school side of that. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and if you want to come chat to me after, if you see me around, I'd love to learn what kind of stuff you guys would love to build. And if you're a teacher as well, if you're interested in getting coding into your high school, I'd love to talk about how we might be able to help with that, or what you're looking for as well. So I think it's Q&A time, I assume. Cool. Okay. So, yay. Yeah. When I started? Okay, so for those of you who didn't hear, the question was, what advice can you give about the mistakes that I made when I first started? I think I made a lot of mistakes throughout the whole thing. I think that if I was to do it all over again, especially if I was your age, I would try and get a really solid understanding of what's happening behind the scenes in terms of the code. Mainly because a lot of my headaches, a lot of the cost, a lot of the risk for me was on the technology side, and because I didn't understand it, it made all of that very difficult. I think also, being careful about who you bring on board as partners, who you work with, is really important. You want to work with people that you trust and who have complementary skills. I've seen a lot of relationships. I mean, I've made this mistake, and I know a lot of my friends who have, where they get involved, they team up with people who maybe they have very overlapping skills, or one person's working on it a lot harder and has a lot more enthusiasm for it than the other. So I think that's another thing. But in terms of general advice, if you're interested in starting something, start something small and then just get in front of someone really quickly. Like, don't kind of lock yourself away in a room and build something for 6 months and then go and be like, okay, it's ready. Like, so stay really close to the customer, I think. And there are times when I feel like I was really close to the customer, and then other times where it became a lot more difficult. Like when I was trying to run the American side of the business whilst in Australia, that was really difficult, and it really reflected in our results and the product and all of that. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah.
Hi, what kind of advice would you give a student just about to finish school who wants to be an entrepreneur?
Cool. So I think the main thing is to kind of just do it. A lot of the time, I remember when I was, I think, 17 or 18. I was in my last year of school, and I went to this family gathering. It was like my mom's family friends, and there was this lady there, and she's like, "Oh, so Nikki, what are you going to be when you finish school?" And I had really good marks and stuff, so she's like, "Oh, you're going to be like a doctor or a lawyer?" And I said, "No, I'm going to be an entrepreneur." And she's like, "Oh, that's cute. No, but seriously, like, what are you going to be?" And I'm like, I don't understand why that's not a valid career choice. And for me, I think when you're younger, just like, maybe it's making jewelry, t-shirts. Like I would do all kinds of stuff when I was in boarding school. I'd make jewelry, I'd sell like art and like all kinds of things. And I think just kind of getting into the habit of like a bit of practice, like running something on a really small scale. And then when you finish up with school, you can spot problems and then go and get together with a team and just have some fun and do it in a low pressure way as well, because you're going to make mistakes, and just do it is probably the main thing. Like if it doesn't, I think a whole bunch of people seem to find that really funny, like down the front here, but yeah, just give it a go, and if it doesn't work out, then you would have learnt a lot, and if it does, well, that's great too. I think there was someone down the front.
Is there any plans to like start a business or become an entrepreneur, like for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm working on this new business, doing, essentially trying to help get coding into high schools and offer the kind of tools and support and everything. So I've teamed up with another company, CodeCamp, to do that, and so that's kind of my next project. So I'm hoping that kind of goes for a while. Yeah. So the biggest adversity I've had to face becoming an entrepreneur, I think it's probably finding the right people. I've worked with people before who like weren't a great fit, and I think finding people who are complementary and who get it and who are as passionate as you are about the whole thing is a really hard thing. But in terms of adversity, I'm actually kind of proud I managed to get over those two really low points that I explained in my talk, because it would have been really easy to give up then, but at least I kind of kept going and I got a lot out of it. So, it's really hard when everything's falling down around you to kind of stand up and go, okay, I'm just gonna like keep trying. So yeah. How do I stay motivated? I don't know, like, to be honest, I really enjoy what I do, and a lot of the motivation, it's nothing really to do with money or anything like that. It's more just, I love kind of taking something from nothing and then bringing it to life and putting a whole bunch of different resources together and working with a great team and kind of seeing that vision come to life and actually helping people. And I remember when I started my t-shirt business, when I realized that moment where I was making a lot of money off these customers, like providing a great product for them, and they'd send me all these emails like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I like love this shirt so much." And they'd send me photos and all this kind of really lovely things. And it's like, as an entrepreneur, that's just so, it's not really about the money. It's like, I like making people happy. I like solving problems and doing all of that and working with cool people. So I think that's probably the most motivating thing. Yeah. The process for getting my app on the App Store. So So when we first started, we were initially a website. When we switched over to being an app, we actually were just targeting iOS, so Apple devices. And for that process, you essentially have to build an app that's production ready if you want to put it on the App Store. But we went and beta tested it with a whole bunch of people. Apple actually makes it fairly difficult just because they have such high quality control. So once we beta tested things, we went and submitted it to the App Store, and you have to like fill out this whole application thing, and then they go through and they will check it. So that could take a week, could take longer, and then they kind of put it on the App Store. But in terms of developing the whole product, a lot of it is you have the idea, you're like, I want to solve this problem. Here's my idea on how to solve that. Let's go talk to customers, talk to people, find out how they experience that problem, how we can solve it. Then you're putting together wireframes that outline the flow of the product, and then you're putting a design on top of that and building out small functionality. Like we built out a really, really crappy mobile prototype that wasn't an actual app, so we could iterate on that faster. Whereas when you have an app, in order to get any changes done, you have to submit it to the App Store, which means you can only change stuff like once every 2 weeks if you're being practical, or like once every week. So, which is not fast enough when you're a startup. So, yeah. Cool. Yeah.
What was the high point of your business?
The high point of my business, I don't know. I think for me, without something, it's not really super tangible, but for me, like, I just love going to work. Like when I was living in New York, going to work and working with a great team. I had such a good team around me, and just, I don't know, like seeing it, like having a lot of fun with them and building something cool that our users absolutely loved, and receiving all the the emails and the support and everything from our community. I think that was a big high point. And another one for me was actually moving to New York. It was something I wanted to do for a really long time, and it was kind of like I overcame so many obstacles to be able to do that. And so when I actually kind of got on the plane and got over there, I was like, whoa, like I actually achieved that goal. And I think there's something really awesome about setting a goal and then actually going out and looking back and going, oh my gosh, I actually did that huge thing that seemed like a big mountain and you kind of got to the top of it. Yeah. Who? Okay, yeah.
Have you ever had any doubts?
Oh, all the time. This is the interesting thing about when you talk to entrepreneurs, a lot of them, the kind of default response to like, oh, how are you going? Is like, oh, we're going really well, blah, 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 blah. And having been in the industry for about 5 years now, being surrounded by entrepreneurs, when you hear what people actually say about how they're doing and how confident they are, and then you hear the kind of like from your close friends how they're actually doing, like all entrepreneurs have a lot of doubts, and it's really hard because you have to maintain confidence in yourself, in your team, in the idea. And like another piece of advice is, as soon as you don't believe in what you're doing anymore is the time to stop, because if you don't believe in it, it's going to reflect everywhere and the whole thing is going to fail. And it really does, when you're put under that kind of pressure, it really does kind of force you to look at things and actually kind of, I know it's corny, but believe in yourself, because if you don't, it's just never going to go anywhere. And I think that's really challenging. There's like one more, I think then I have to get off stage. I'm going to get booted off. Yeah?
So have you had to deal with like sexism in the industry, especially like having to do with code, especially since such a male-dominated industry?
Have I had to deal with sexism?
Yeah.
To be honest, in Australia, I haven't felt like, yes, I've dealt with sexism, but in a really positive way, in the sense that because I'm female and in a male-dominated industry, I stand out a lot. So I feel like I get a lot more press, I get a lot more help. Like there's a whole bunch of things that I would spin to my advantage. I don't think in Australia I was negatively experienced sexism, but in America, yes, definitely I have in America, especially in New York, and I think a lot of it's a cultural thing. And I feel like kind of in Australia, I have a bit of a reputation now, and I was able to prove myself a bit. But in New York, I remember one time I was in an office and I was working on the weekend, and some guy came up to me and was like, "Oh, like, how do you get your team? How does he motivate you to work so hard?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, like, I just see you in here on the weekend working really hard, and I was wondering how he, motivates you because I'm building up my team." And then I realized he was talking about my co-founder, Marcin, because the entire team was female except for Marcin, and he just automatically assumed that he was the head of the whole thing and the CEO, and we were his, I was working for him. And stuff like that, you do get sometimes, but to be honest,
If she has time.
it hasn't been that bad. And I think you've just got to kind of move forward, and if it's something you're really passionate about, just hold your head high and do your thing. And my time is up. Cool. Oh no.
Just
Wait,
quickly,
really?
When you were developing your business, did you feel confident to rely on others to do things for you, or did you want to make sure everything was done perfectly yourself?
I didn't have a problem relying on others. It was just a case of trusting that they would actually do things. If anything, I can be too trusting sometimes, and so that wasn't an issue per se, but it is really hard to find someone who will do something to the standard that you want it done, and having those relationships is really valuable. So cool, you finally got your questions. Okay.